I actually still use your ABC
Oh,
framework.
yeah, it's my favorite.
Yeah, can you just share that very
Oh,
briefly?
yeah. This is an old American Express leadership tool. It's the ABCDE. And like there's versions on my monitor that are the size of a Post-it, and then there's more broad versions. So I do it when I'm having a one-on-one with somebody. Who am I talking to? What do I want to get out of it? What do I want to say? I don't write every word, but like enough to like stimulate my brain. The outline starts to come together in the C. It's a really effective tool that can expand out to really complicated communications, but also be very casual. Just let me pause about what I'm going to do in the next half hour and why I'm talking to this person, as opposed to what do you want to talk about? And then the one-on-one becomes useless.
Welcome to another episode of One Size Fits None. Our special guest today is Mr. Jonathan Cherins. Good to see you. Should I call you Jonathan, John, Cherins?
I think mostly you called me Cherins. I think you called me Cherins most times. So like stick with whatever works. Stick with whatever works.
Stick to whatever works. All right, great. So I had the great pleasure of working with Cherins at Yext for a few years. Before that, and please correct me if I have any of this wrong, you're part of the very early team at Juno, and then D&B running like risk management, and then in a bunch of marketing leadership roles, GM roles, running enterprise in the Americas for TravelClick. Do I have this right so far?
So far, it's accurate.
Okay, good. And then coming over to Yext and running a huge part of our go-to-market business, like through the years, like just leading up to the IPO and through the IPO, sort of some critical time. And then went over to a company called Puppy Spot, where you're the chairman and CEO for I think about 4 or 5 years. Currently the CEO of Vector Solutions, which is a huge PE-backed SaaS company.
Correct.
Got all that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as we get into it, so I'm really excited for this conversation. We had an opportunity to work together. I learned so much from you and found you to be one of the most sophisticated and structured thinkers and managers I was ever around in my career. And
I feel the same way. Like, and I looked and like what I learned at VX from an entrepreneurial side of things. Like, I couldn't start anything by myself ever. Like, I can run things. I'm like a cup of espresso to help things grow. But like that whole entrepreneurial spirit that you and Howard had, like I could never do what you did. And I think it was a very much a two-way street. I learned a ton at Yext, probably more. And the network of people at Yext is like the greatest collection of talent. I mean, obviously, I think now I've got the greatest collection of talent, but people and relationships, both professionally and personally, that I gained from Yext has changed my life 100%.
That's amazing to hear. All right, so let's get into there's so many different ways I want to approach this. So one, like you've seen so much throughout your career, like different company type. I'd love to just start with just your philosophy right now as it stands on management, like how you run your team in terms of like daily, weekly, monthly. What does that look like? And just before you get into that, can you give us a sense of size and scale of Vector?
Sure. So let me give you 2 seconds on Vector, and then I'll tell you about the company. So we're give or take $250 million company, very high margins. Genstar bought the company for summer 22. So they're about 3 or 4 years into the whole period. And what we do is we provide purpose-built learning management system and knowledge to first responders. And we do it in 3 big verticals. The easiest one to identify is like public sector with fire departments, law enforcement, up to the federal government. We do higher education, both learners and faculty and required. And everything starts with a compliance base. Like you have to take a certain training. And then we layer on top of that workflow solutions and productivity software. So again, public safety, education, and then commercial industry, like the rest of GDP. So like think about like OSHA stuff, heavy industry, architects, engineering, construction, oil and gas. The company has about 700 employees and probably another couple hundred contractors around the world, mostly North America focused. And classic SaaS model. Like that's the way about it, which you know well.
Right. Okay, so about 700 people, 100 contractors. All right. So how do you run your team? You're the CEO of this giant sprawling organization. How do you do it?
It's an evolution, right? And so like there's certain parts, let me go through the rhythm, right? So I have an executive team, and I'm a big believer in kind of layering. So like there's a core exec committee, let's just like 4 or 5 of us that are running the company and really dealing with our investors, the CFO, myself, our president, a couple others on the revenue side. There's a broader executive team around 15 or 20 people that gets into some of the other things like comms and M&A and things like that. And so that core group of people meets every week. And obviously there's lots of organic dialogue. The broader executive team meets once a month. And then there's a senior leadership team, which is like everyone's plus ones, which I view this SLT as a communication body. Like how do I get our messages across? And that we do do both a monthly meeting as well as a usually in person once a year to bring us together around planning time. And just to go back, most of our executives, the core group, are here in the New York City area. We have offices in Tampa and Bloomington, Indiana, San Diego, and I'm missing one, Cincinnati, Ohio. So we travel a lot to those places, and I try to organize those executive team meetings, the weeklies or the monthlies, on site in location to bring us together.
Just you sort of blew through it quick, the difference between sort of decision making sort of meetings and communication oriented ones. Can you just break that down a little bit?
Sure. So, any kind of body, and this, like I think it's like you guys at Howard's kind of apartment on Sunday is a decision making body. Our decision making body is like core 5 or 6 of us, and we meet every Monday. And then there's smaller subsets of that. I have a go to market version of it, the 3 of us who meet every Monday morning, like what are our numbers, how is our pipeline looking, things like that. And then the executive team, a little bit inherited from what I was here before, and we've kept that alive. That's like half decisions, half communication. The senior leadership team is purely message. How do I get the messages across about our strategy, what we're focused on? But when you get into like goal setting and reviews and kind of the mechanics of this larger organization, you need all those things, because if you involve everybody in decisions, you get paralyzed. I need the support in not making every decision myself. I can't make every decision. So that smaller group of 5 people, they were very empowered to make decisions without me. Because if everything comes on my desk, I get nothing done. So decisioning, half decisioning, communication, all communication. And let me just say, I spend a lot of my time on communications. The communications platform, like when I started trying to meet almost every person like traveling around the country, which was really challenging. And now I spend a lot of time on my quarterly all hands, like how do that message across, which is, it's half in person, half remote. It's me talking to a screen. Usually I try to do it in office, but like, how do I get that feedback and how do I get alignment? So quarterly all hands, I'm very active on email and video communications to the team on subjects, whether that be the current administration and what's going on and how that impacts our business, or review time and how do I do that. And I make myself available. I also do to compensate for the remoteness, like to lose that office cooler, because we're a hybrid organization. Every 10 days, I do a CEO roundtable with cross-sectional employees, about 10 of them, and get them to know each other and introduce themselves, as well as like, okay, what are 2 things we're doing really well? What are the 2 things we're doing really bad? You hear that so much. Like when we were at Yext, like you could walk and get a cup of coffee and like, listen, those break rooms were wonderful, but you learned so much about what people were thinking about. It's really hard to get that when you're in a environment. So I exert a lot of time on communications, and we measure everything, we survey everything, and we try to. A lot of the company changes that I've made over the 3.5 years, 3+ years I've been here, have come from those more intimate settings, the round tables, like what's going on with benefits, what's going on with why we're doing this, what's our strategy. So it all kinds of adds up to giving you the data to make decisions and communicate strategy. But there's a lot more to it than that. But I just wanted to stress the importance of communications.
Right. No, huge. I actually still use your ABC
Oh,
framework.
yeah, it's my favorite.
Yeah. Can you just share that very
Oh,
briefly?
yeah. This is an old American Express leadership tool. It's the ABCDE. And like there's versions on my monitor that are the size of a Post-it, and then there's more broad versions. So it stands for A is the audience. Who are you talking to? B, what is the behavior you're trying to get out of the person you're talking to? C, what's the content? Think about writing a board deck. Like, here are the messages I want to get across. And then the D, the design. Is it a PowerPoint? Is it a chit chat? Is it a roundtable? And the E, evaluation of how you're going to evaluate whether you're effective. So I do it when I'm having a one-on-one with somebody. Who am I talking to? What do I want to get out of it? What do I want to say? I don't write every word, but like enough to like stimulate my brain. But when we do board decks or broader communications, like we have an all hands town hall, like we'll write an ABCD of what we're trying to do. And then the outline starts to come together in the C. And we use it for meetings when you have like your RKOs or sales kickoffs. It's a really effective tool that can expand out to really complicated communications, but also be very casual. Just let me pause about what I'm going to do in the next half hour and why I'm talking to this person, as opposed to what do you want to talk about? And then the one-on-one becomes useless.
Right. I think it's such a helpful little cheat sheet. I have a few from you I still
Yeah,
use.
well, that's great. I had a couple
Yeah.
from you too.
A lot of the meeting design is around communication.
Yeah, I think just the COVID impacted leadership in a lot of ways, and hybrid organizations and people traveling on calls. And I exert myself tremendously on communications. And I think most companies don't do a good job with comms. And when employees don't know what they're doing or why, they'll only do it 50% well. And you got to give them purpose and why you're doing it. So there's a lot of other things in this company and meetings and context that have nothing to do with comms. But I think as a CEO, there's a lot to do to make sure everyone is marching in the same direction and can answer the whys and why we're doing.
Totally. How does that ladder together with goal setting?
Comms probably stays away. Those probably pretty separate, kind of bifurcating it. Goal setting, obviously is you know me. I like to measure everything. So, we do goal setting. We do it on an annual basis, which is kind of inadequate. And we're tweaking them every quarterly, but we tie goals, and 3 to 5 goals at most. One of them has to be an employee goal, on what the core functions are. Everybody in the company's goals are recorded and used in obviously our HRIS, as well as like in those one-on-ones. Like, I could geek out on this forever. Like when I get my weekly notes from people, which is very forward-looking. Not, I don't need to know what you did in the past. I need to know what you're focused on. People's like 3 bullet versions of their goals are always embedded in that, and we always change it. It's also tied to comp, tied to merits, tied to bonus payouts. So I'm a big believer in that goal setting. And a lot of this, I mentioned American Express. You mentioned I was at D&B for 10 years, which was really infused with a lot of American Express leadership. And even though I never worked at American Express, there's a lot of the things we do. Goal setting, we can go into L ratings and G ratings and inputs and outputs and how we give feedback, and the whole feedback loop as a mechanism. All were genesis and begun, I believe, at American Express. And there was a CEO of D&B, a guy named Alan Lauren, who passed away recently. And he brought in D&B at the time, this is like the 2000s, I think they call it the aughts, right? Was we had good product, not great. And like the thing I took away is communications, talent, leadership make the difference in competitive situations. Like you're not always going to have the best product. You're not always going to have something that sells off itself. And you've got to focus on those things to make the organization hum. And it's harder at a teeny tiny company because everyone knows what everybody's doing. And the broader and wider you get, the more those tools become useful in running an organization.
Those sort of like bullet points of the forward-looking stuff. How far through the organization do you just look at that for your directs, or are you going like pretty deep on that?
I don't look at everybody's personally. I obviously the people who are on my executive team who I work with every day, different levels of depth, but it is a very useful tool for me in because you just can't keep everything in your head. Where keeps me aligned on priorities with people. Do I believe all vectorites do this? Probably not. I think most of the people who are on leadership tracks and managers do it. Now you're going to make me want to check to see how many people actually do it. I suspect it's pretty broad because most of my leadership team I've personally hired to work with, and they come from that same school of leadership that was American Express, D&B, Travel Click, and a bunch of us ended up at Yext, as you know. And I think some of us use that structure more regularly there than others. It's different for everybody. It works for me.
I am shocked you do not know precisely every single person in the organization and the frequency they produce that.
Nothing like stressing out a random employee by calling them, "Hey, can I see your weekly alignment note?" I do that occasionally. Like I do think it's important. Like I'm not going to go spook somebody and call them and ask them for their goals, but I do try to reach out to the random employee. They matter, and I think it matters that you care and are listening, and like try to answer every question that comes into an all hands, no matter how controversial it is. And if there's something you can't do in front of 700 people, Teams them, Zoom them, whatever, and call them, and it gets rid of the fear of the hierarchy. Like this. Like some people are talking to you as a founder, probably especially at the end, and people who weren't there at the beginning, right? And now, oh, Jonathan, like me, Cherins or whatever, my family, kids, and you have no. I think you and I had the same thing, but a 25-year-old SDR or somebody who like you're the CEO, you're the founder, and there's this like nervousness that comes with it. So I try to humanize and get rid of the hierarchy so anybody can talk to anybody, because I don't want to end up being IBM and the danger of getting into complicated matrix organizations and all of a sudden you're IBM, which doesn't work for anybody. No offense to anybody who loves IBM.
The worst thing about that dynamic to me was always like I'd have like a casual conversation with something and maybe like ask someone about something, and inadvertently I'd sort of spin up like a whole project that they would spend a bunch of time on, and it was like sort of a passing comment, and then
You're just curious. Like good leaders are curious. They ask questions, and then people will spin up. And then my favorite is people then take it the other way and they use my name. Jonathan was asking. Like no, that doesn't work. Just I'm allowed to ask in these questions, and like I think the office, the titles get in the way sometimes of real genuine communication and engagement. Of like, I'm really struggling, and that's why I do those roundtables. So like you somebody in collections who's maybe making $60,000 a year, or you're talking to one of your senior execs. Like I want the same honest dialogue because I can't be everywhere, but you want to know if there's something broken. You and I are both fixers. You want to go fix things, and so it's a constant struggle to humanize the person and not be the title.
Do you ever, at Yext, we sort of had the clear list of things people should not work on in addition to the things people should work on. Have you done that kind of thing across any other companies? Have you found it to be helpful?
Yeah, I do. I do. I don't know. Did I have a list of things not to do? I'm trying to remember if I had that.
We had it at company wide, like no social features.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I listen. I always, when we talk about in the weeklies or bi-weeklies in this rhythm, and certainly in executive team meetings, we have a very clear delineation of what we are not doing. I put it in my board decks. Like, you guys have given us this feedback. We are focused on A, B, and C. We are not doing this. I think it's an undervalued question of what are you not going to do? Because you and I both know we can try to spin up 1,000 work streams and you get nothing done. You can really only do two or three things well at once, and everything else has to be, I'm going to put this off, and it's on a list somewhere, and we keep track of it. My president Greg is really good at this. Like, his weekly is half the stuff we're doing and what we need to do and alignment we need, and here are the things that we are not getting to. And eventually, if we're effective, those things come above and we end up getting to. But it's most people try to do everything, and that's the death of productivity.
For sure. So just jumping over to like the people side of things, we were kind of chatting earlier. You just did your whole alignment process for the company. It sounds like you do, I guess, annual performance reviews.
Yes, and mid-year check-ins. So there's a full review process, and there's the Googles of the world who do it every month and change the OKRs, and I've never been able to make that work because then you end up in so much oversight and like changing goals and reviewing it. You can change a goal at any time, but we do annual performance reviews tied to compensation and all that fun stuff, and we do a mid-year check-in. Both get organized and recorded into an HRIS. But reviews are two-way streets. Like, my managers need feedback, I need feedback. So we try to make it a conversation. The worst thing that can happen is like a manager spitting out like, here are all the things you did well, and here are all the things you did bad, and not getting feedback themselves. So that's a constant evolution of making sure that those are two-way streets and dialogues. But the mid-year check-ins are really important. And good leaders do it much more often. Yeah, I say this all the time. I know you and I have talked about this. If you get something in your review that you're surprised at, that's the fault of a leader. Like, reviews should be cumulative and like, this is what we've been talking about all year. Here's what you want. Like, some people want to be CEOs, some people want to just live their lives and go home at night. Like, understanding what people's goals are and what they want to get out of work, and then tailoring that feedback to help them achieve those goals, as opposed to just, writing reviews just to get it done. It can become a task if you don't do it well.
Do you have any tricks to, a lot of times people will be uncomfortable sharing, constructive feedback with their boss or the management. Any tricks you have to help people share that kind of feedback?
Practice, practice, practice. Like, I think the hardest thing, and it's really hard to teach, is the ability to give constructive feedback and make people feel good about it. The number one thing I don't think a lot of leaders do is humanize themselves when they make mistakes. We make them all the time. And if I sit here and say, in front of the whole company, I was wrong, I did this incorrectly, and I got feedback. And you have to acknowledge it publicly and make it okay to be vulnerable. Anybody who says they have all the answers and is always right is full of shit. Like, it's just not true. I know your calendar, everyone mine, we're working together. You're going a million miles a minute. We're flying around the world. You're going to make mistakes. And I think it's really important for leaders to humanize it. And okay, let me give you feedback that, hey, Brian, I listened to your last podcast and I really didn't like it. It was really boring or whatever. And like, never say anything about it. Like, no, like, it doesn't work that way. You have to like admit your own mistakes, and you have to like give a piece of feedback. Like, does that make sense to you? Like, how does it like, and again, I understand it's hard, but like, what can we do together to help on this? It's not the employee's problem to solve.
One might even say feedback is a gift.
It is a gift. And sometimes, as my team likes to say, it's a gift you sometimes can return.
The feedback is a gift line I got from you too.
You could go to anybody in my company, Brian, and they all know it ad infinitum. It's a gift. And it really is. Like, and that's the hardest part about running organizations. I don't care if you're starting something in your basement, or you're running Vector, or you're running IBM or whatever. Like, feedback is the gasoline that makes us better. Like, think about a sales call. This went well, this didn't go well. The debrief, feedback on a meeting, feedback on leadership, feedback on how you handle a difficult situation. It's the most important skill in leadership, and it's not taught well.
I could not agree with more. It's actually, I don't want to go into windmill stuff, but literally the first thing we focused on was a way to facilitate feedback more organically. One of the things for us as we thought about it, I'm curious what you think, is the timeliness of feedback is such an important thing. The idea of like bottling it up for like a once a year kind of thing
Forced.
is crazy. How do you make sure like across the org there's like kind of that culture of feedback? Obviously you model it yourself personally. Is there anything else you do? Any other tricks you found to try to?
First of all, like, like I think keeping notes on the things and remembering, like it doesn't work if it's delayed. So I go out of my way. Obviously, I think you make a role modeling, making it okay to give feedback, making it okay, but you also have to do it then. Like, and you can't do it usually in front of a group. I still owe Howard a phone call in Rome to try to figure out how to get meeting culture down and all that stuff. So, but like I try to do everything in like either 20 minutes or 45 minutes, or you have those breaks and things like that. And then you pick up the phone and you call somebody like, hey, what did you think about that? Do you think we could have handled that better? You have to give it in the moment. And you can't, and people have to know that feedback, they're not in trouble. And like, and I think even saying, hey, I'd like to give you some feedback, it's disarming. As opposed to, I don't like the way you did that, or that pissed me off, or the I's in it. Like, you should never use the word I. Like, a company would be better, or hey, let me give you this feedback. Like, it's not Jonathan, or what I think, or what BD thinks. It's factual and it's in the moment. But if you're writing down everything that's going on, and like I keep a little notes thing on everybody who works for me and all the plus twos and everybody like that, and you keep a running go of it. And then if it starts to repeat itself, then you got a problem, right? Okay, so if people aren't taking feedback or what have you. But I think if you role model it and if you do it in the moment and you cannot, like you said, bottle it up. Like, what a failure of a leader if all of a sudden somebody's losing their job. Like, oh, I didn't know I wasn't doing well. Like, that's my fault. And like, hey, why didn't I get that promotion or why didn't I get that raise? Like, there should be celebrations along the way of acknowledging the things we do well and the things we don't do well, because that's how you grow and that's how you get better. There's no other way than to do it and to do it. And some people don't like feedback, and I may not be the right leader for them, and this might not be the right company for them. People want to be just told that everything's great all the time. But I don't care if you're growing 100% or 1% or you're shrinking. There's going to be things you need to get better at. Not everything's sunshine and roses.
It's also, I know you've operated at scale globally. The differences across different companies and cultures is the only question I found that pretty much seemed to work everywhere was I would start with asking someone if they were open to feedback.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Everyone will be open to it, and then from there you
They'll
can
all
get it.
say yes, right? But do they really
Yeah,
mean
you
it?
have to say yes.
Yeah, but you bring up a really good point. Like, you and I dealt with a lot of geography stuff at Yex, but like it's interesting here, like public safety, talking to like ex law enforcement or cops and talking to people who are hardcore SaaS professionals or sales. Like, there's so much, like, diversity comes in so many flavors, and it's geographic, it's race and gender, and it's also like experience, like what I've been doing and where I came from and how I got here. And there are totally different subcultures on feedback and whether they take it or not, or whether you could do it in a group, and like being mindful of who you're talking to and understanding it, which goes you back to that ABCD, right? Like, who am I talking to? Like, remind myself of who this person is and what they're going through. Maybe they're in crisis at home. Maybe they're like super ambitious. Like, knowing your audience and then tailoring that feedback to who they are. And that's why I always encourage my team. Like, the ABCD tool doesn't have to be a document that we align on and iterate and track changes. It can be a post-it. It can be in your head. Like, hey, I got to go talk to Brian and give him feedback. I just got to say, like, this didn't sit well. Like, it just takes, it's like a 30-second pause. It's like, the pre-shot routine in a free throw. Okay. Like, and it becomes rhythm and it becomes natural and it becomes part of who you are.
Right. If only there was an AI agent to help you remember these things.
Wonderful. That's the way teed it up for you right there. Perfect.
On the AI side, I'm wondering, you're obviously dealing in sort of like a regulated space, and it's probably got to be, relatively, I would imagine, slow to adopt a bunch of new tools. Have you started playing with any of the new
Oh,
sort of
ton.
AI?
I think it's a danger to think of AI as just as a cost solution. Like, there is an element of that, right? There, like, by definition, you and I have been dealing with globalization and automation of jobs for, since the day we got out of school, right? That's a real thing. Within Vector, we're tending a lot, like, and we have to your point, in highly regulated environments, disclose what we're doing, where we're doing, how we're doing it. So let's talk about, let's say, knowledge production. So we do a lot of courseware, and like, think about like how we produce videos, how we produce content for our learners. And I think there's a tremendous investment that we're making in automating and using large language models to condense the time frame to do storyboarding and editing and things like that. but we also sandwich that with human capital and subject matter experts. So like when we're writing a course in oil and gas design, I can't do that, but we have people who have been in the oil fields and done this, and they've done it, and they help us think about the outline, write the ABCD of the course. Yes, we'll use that, go through it, and then we accredit everything. So like think about accreditation by a governing body like OSHA, or accreditation by, we just talked about Wisconsin, the, state of Wisconsin governing body, and what educators need to do, all the way down to like vector verified and peer reviewed. So we surround technology with human capital to make sure, and in some places like we can't use AI in certain parts of like our interactions with the federal government, and we have to disclose it. And then there's like tactical things. So we're using it a lot there on the efficiency side. And then tactically, everything from learning, like internally, like feedback on how sales are going. And, we're using it in pipeline forecasting and the components of pipeline. So there's like probably 20 or 30 small pockets of efficiency, everything from HR and feedback to automating things within the Salesforce or Churn Zero ecosystem and things like that. And then there's the macro efficiency model. I know you're going to want to talk about this. So I just got there. Then you have to deal with like the organizational resistance around it. Like what is acceptable? What is good? And getting people goes back to communication. AI is a productivity tool. We need to do this before it's done to us as a productive engine. We're the big kids on the block in some of our markets. We're not the startup, and like, how do I deal with that? But getting employees to embrace technology is no different than embracing globalization and embracing a CRM 30 years ago. Like when I started selling, my CRM was a yellow legal pad. That can't be right. So like oh, you want me to record my calls and tell me what I'm doing in a CRM? What's that? And we all went through that, but getting them to own it, and this goes back to communication, and AI as an asset to invest in, and making it not the enemy of like my job. Hey, I don't want to work on this because it could lead to me not having a job, means you're probably thinking about it wrong. And getting them to ask for it is hard. And there's pockets of the organization that are going faster than others, and there's parts of the organization that we're forcing it, and there's parts of the organization that are pulling it, and that's okay, and we'll get there together. But it's I think for a company our size, we're I probably wish we started a little bit earlier, but the adoption is accelerating at a pretty, and our boards and our investors are pushing us in a big clip in that way too.
Something I'm really curious your perspective on is, so, as you adopt these new tools, as you said, they're like to increase, a lot of them are productivity tools to increase output. There's always this like delicate balance where you give like teams new tools, they're supposed to be more productive, hopefully they're exceeding their goals, and then as you get into like goal setting in the future, you have to be like raising that bar, and people like hem and haw about that. Have you sort of dealt with that dynamic yet? Is it coming soon?
It exists on multiple levels. Like first of all, anytime you add a system, I don't care if it's AI or software, you're adding a system on top of a system and on top of a system. So like, how are you getting rid of systems? Like, I don't know what the X budget was when we were together, like on software, like
Too much.
right. So like, I think we are diligent about, if you're going to buy something, they're going to get rid of two things. And like it's a game plan of ours, and we force it. And our software spend is down like 50% since I've been here. But I think the bigger thing is really on productivity and goaling. And this is a big rub. Like whether it be how much you're going to spend on company capital to get something means, okay, like we're going to keep a certain amount of investment in this area flat because we are forcing the adoption of technology, whether that be 10 years ago in software or now with AI. And forcing leaders to be creative, because you and I both know this, the shortcut is, oh, let me just hire somebody, and all of a sudden you have too many people or too big, and right sizing organizations is painful, unnecessary, and it turns your stomach. So forcing that up front and dealing with that from the get-go of why we're doing this and what the goals are going to be, and understanding that you can control the efficiency gain by controlling budgets and have a negative spin if you do it incorrectly. Like we're just going to hold spend on X, but we're going to use technology to grow and expand capacity, whether it be how much content we're writing or how much we're selling or things like that. So it's different by department and different what we do. But I think the alignment with the leaders on the goal setting and what their multi-year view is of where they need to go, not just doing goal setting for the year, but like we try to do it, okay, like here are your goals for the year, and where do you want to be in 18 months and 24 months and 36 months? I mean, a lot of it is pie in the sky and it changes, but it forces you to think about like, if I'm going to keep going on this productivity clip, I'm going to have to add so many people or so much capital. Like, let's rethink that. Is there a way that we could do this more efficiently with technology? Because, and sometimes you have to spend more upfront to get that efficiency gain, and that's a budgeting process, and you work it out, whether it be capex or below the line or what have you. So it's different, but it's complicated, and nobody really wants to be told like, hey, you. I'm gonna not get all the capital I want to grow, but that's a negotiation that we have, and that's the I'm going to come back and we really haven't talked about it, but I think it's really important. Who's on your team and their alignment with what you're trying to do? I don't care whether you're growing 100% or growing 5 or you're shrinking. The number one cost of most of our organizations is people. If you get the right people and you are benevolently merciless about talent, like giving more to the best and working through people who shouldn't be there. If you get the right people and they're aligned, those other things get very easy. And in reality, if you're having a hard time with budgeting and planning or adoption of AI or adoption of a tool, most likely it's a talent problem. It's very easy to just gloss over the hiring and building a world-class team. And how do you do that? How much time? Are you always interviewing? Are you always talking to people? Are you just compromising? Are you just okay with what you have? And constantly reinventing the talent pool and constantly bringing in, again, I'll use the word diverse, even though it's kind of, someone is going to yell at us for using that word these days. But diversity comes in so many forms, and getting new thinking, and people who have viewed these problems in other organizations who have dealt with it, and people who have fresh eyes who might be right out of school and like, hey, why are you doing it this way? Like like when I was a kid, I was a tech geek. I was a wizard. I could code. I failed out of the University of Michigan electrical engineering. And that's why I'm in sales and all that stuff. But like, fresh set of eyes of kids who look at things and like I watch. I mean, we both have sons the same age. Like how they take notes and how they interact with technology is dramatically different than both of us. And we were pretty advanced as our age, but we're we're old now.
Let's not let anyone else know. Well, how do you? I mean, to the talent piece, like, so how do you think about it? Up leveling talent, like for your team as you're like sort of dealing with managing people out. Sounds like you're very active about it.
Yeah, I think we're always active, and I think goes back to feedback loops and what people want to get out of this. But I think you have a lot of experience in this too. Like it starts with like the core group. Like when I look at the people who are on my team, for the most part, I've worked with almost everybody. And the active cultivating of your network, and I'm just going to do an editorial to any young listeners for this. Like, this is why you shouldn't work remotely, and you should not just work in your living room, because like every job I've ever gotten and how I met you guys comes from building that network. And yeah, does it pay the bills to go have coffee with somebody for no reason or go to that happy hour? And I don't mean those structured networking events, but I mean like cultivating the kind of people who think the way you do and understand your leadership style, who have worked with that kind of leadership style, is a lifelong component. Like my dad passed away about a year and a half ago, and he had this Rolodex. Like, remember those old flippy things with cards in it? It was spun.
No, I'm not that old.
Well, okay, your parents were. So it was one of my dad's, and he had a color coding for everyone in his network. And I kind of do this digitally. And okay, this person is a once a month. This person's a once a quarter. This person's once a year. So like when I look at like the guy who runs like my go-to-market organization, Greg, like I work with him at TravelClick 2010 to 2014. The guy who runs sales, I work with at D&B from '02 to 10. Marketing, all of them have either tangentially worked with me or worked with somebody I've worked with. The risk of failure goes down because you don't need to check references if you work with them. You don't have to go pay search firms. I'm sorry if search firms are listening, but I think you have a 50-50 rate at best with a search firm. And so that starts there, that doing it from day one and building followership. And if you and I were to go hire somebody, and I think this is one of the things you like about me, like I could eventually call A, B, C, and they would come over. And I think that's happened here. And I think you guys are remarkable at that. I think the Yext mafia, for lack of a better term, is spread out all over SaaS and all over the kind of MarTech world. And they're doing amazing things. And you look at what some of these people are doing in LinkedIn, even the ex-employees LinkedIn group, like CEOs, COOs, it's impressive. But when you get into the mechanics of it, you have to go back to feedback. And, listen, nobody wants to fire somebody or exit somebody from the business. You want people to choose to be ambitious and want more, choose their spot. And if it's not working, to come kind of a mutual decision that this isn't working for them. And that's hard. And it should turn your stomach, but it's an important part. And most leaders struggle to give hard feedback, as we talked about earlier, and then to act on that feedback if that pattern of feedback doesn't get resolved. And there's an unfortunate side of our jobs that you have to do active talent management, and it's good that it bothers you. It's good that when you have to exit somebody who you like as a human but isn't doing a great job, like that's horrible. But it's an important part of our jobs. And And you're usually doing them a service too, because if they're staying in a place where they're not being productive, that's not going to be good for their career. And almost everybody, I think, and you guys have done this, I know you have, I've done it, come back, and if you do it right, like they're appreciative in the long term. I'm not talking about job actions, but like the one-on-one, like things like that. It's an important part of what we do, and it's you have to role model it, you've got to teach it, you've got to treat people with respect, but you've got to constantly be reinventing talent along the way.
Totally agree. And I'm so glad you brought up the value of being in the office, building your network earlier in your career. I don't think that's talked about enough. I don't think people appreciate that enough.
I'm sure you listen to like Scott Galloway, right? Like, some of his stuff. Like, talking about like the loneliness of the younger generation is part of some of the angst that's in our society right now. And, whether you're having a good day or bad day, it's good to share with other humans. And if you're like walking, like I'm working from home today, I was in the city yesterday and I'm on the road again tomorrow and all next week. And I have the ability to travel and go places, but like you can't build a career in your living room. I'm glad to feel like seeing, like we're doing it at Vector and I see it across all of our portfolio companies and things like that. Pulling people together it's critical, and more like even hybrid, like what does it mean? And we empower local leaders to make their decisions about what's best. Like a lot of our product technology is remote. Okay, it is what it is. It's been that way for a long time. We're not going to change that. But like when people like end up like living near an office and staying home, it's to their own detriment and to the companies, and getting people to recognize that. And like RTO is a bad word in some places, like, oh, the company's making me go, versus, you know what, my career would be better if I interacted with more humans. And I think about selling, like the bullpens we had at Yex, and I think about my first days, like you learn so much through osmosis. What a great question. And like you and I are big question askers when we sell. Like, what a great way to ask that question. You like there's no that's feedback in its own right. Like, oh wow, that was great. And like I remember listening to like Avi or Koha when we were in the day, like talking to customers, and like you learn so much, and you could see people's face when they're having a good day and celebrate it. You could see people struggling, and as a leader and have empathy for them and give them a pat on the back. And it's really hard to do remotely. It's really hard.
Right. And going back to what you were talking about earlier, the sort of communication side of things, like if you want to really communicate and connect with people, you got to be there with them. You got to understand what's really going on. Any quick predictions for the future of management? We have all these new AI tools, but what's the world going to look like the next few years?
Well, if I knew that, I'd have a much bigger job, I guess. I think management, I think the things we've talked about today are not technology issues. And I think technology will always, like it always has, create efficiencies, and there'll be doomsday predictions of what it means, and I don't really get into the edge conditions of that. But I think ultimately the future of management, if we can get around this remote loneliness thing, and get people together, which I think is the real risk in our society and in our businesses. But I think it comes down to like the things we talked about: effective communication, leadership, feedback. I don't think those things will ever change. And I don't think technology is ever going to be good enough to, like, you can get like Gong or Outreach to tell an SDR or sales rep on, hey, this could have been said better.
You're talking too much.
Yeah, your calls should be 13 seconds longer. Like, that's useful, but like the connection and learning of being together, and affect, even like, in deals, like, AI is not going to close the deal and get a handshake. You have to do that. And it'll always be around the edges and make us more powerful. But I think the human capital is always going to be our biggest expense and our biggest asset. And I don't see that changing. I really don't.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We covered a lot of ground. This is fantastic. As always, learned something new. For example, I thought it was just ABC. I didn't even
It was
know
a
about the
D&E, yeah.
D&E.
Everyone forgets the D&E. It
Yeah,
happens all
yeah,
the time.
yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure everyone's going to get a lot of value from hearing from all your experience, leadership. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great seeing you.
Any commercial for Vector? Anything helpful? Anything you're hiring for?
Oh, always hiring. And anybody who was like, listen, I think the one thing I love, many things I love about Vector, the purpose and mission of helping others and keeping people safe, and the ability to carve out a career. It's a unique place. It's not for everybody. Some people like, you and like have this kind of entrepreneur, I want to start things. It's a wonderful place. You can check me out on LinkedIn. All the jobs are there. Come to the Vector website. But if you are in the wanting to do good in the world, it is a wonderful hybrid of like a for-profit company that is actually mission driven and actually does keep people safe and protect the people who are on the front lines of our workforce. So I've never been happier. I love it. And I would invite anybody to check us out. We'd love to talk to you.
That's awesome. Vector Solutions. Thank you to Jonathan Cherins. Appreciate it as always. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like or subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.